Welcome back to Legacy Decoded. Most conversations around automotive logistics revolve around technology. Nowadays, we have AI, automation, market trends, digital transformation. But today's conversation starts somewhere completely different because today's guest believes the biggest issue facing automotive logistics isn't technology at all. He believes it's trust. Joining me today is Jay Wurzberger, founder of ATL Auto Business. Jay, really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. Good intro.
Thank you. When we first connected on LinkedIn, you said one sentence that immediately kind of stopped me. And you said trust in this industry is on life support. I honestly couldn't stop thinking about that. What made you actually say it?
Well, thank you for that. Man, I'm sweating. I'm always sweating. The industry's like, yeah, Jay, sweat it. I say that because, man, auto logistics, I've been making this channel and pardon me if I don't directly answer a question, feel free to guide me back, but I make notes and I will come back to I will arrive at that answer. I talk to a lot of companies. I've been in auto logistics a long time. Many people have been in it longer than I have. Many people have not, which doesn't really matter, but it takes a lot of time to understand auto logistics. And part of the problem is through your journey in auto logistics, you think you know something and then you find out you don't. And then you think you know something and then you find out you don't. And things change, technology changes, companies change, people change. And it's probably like any other industry. But the thing about auto logistics is, and I can't help think of transportation in general and some of the negative roots of transportation. And that is that, and I do talk negatively about transportation, it's a really rough industry, almost like waste management. You don't just pick up the trash and dump the trash. There seems to be a lot of politics. That's
Mhm.
how auto logistics is too. You should be just picking up cars and delivering cars. It's a lot more than that. And that's the hard part. And that's why trust is on life support. Because after a while, you start wondering, why aren't we just picking up and delivering cars? Why is there so much politics? And I
Mhm.
think part of the problem is there's too many companies. There's not enough cars to go around. And I've heard people say for years, I've heard carriers say this and brokers say this. And also, when I talk about the ecosystem of auto transport, I got a pretty good sense now of, you know, new versus used. And then there's repossession and brokers and auctions and carriers and dealers and repo. And there's just a lot to it. But I've heard carriers and brokers say there's enough business to go around. I think that's just a catchy phrase. I don't think it's true. I think that's part of the problem. There's not enough cars to go around. There's too many people fighting for the same scraps. Somebody's making a big chunk and a bunch of people are making little bits. And there's no concern. If you're competitors, that's fine. But even in your own company, you're fighting for scraps. This is the beginning of the problem, is even in your own company, you're fighting for scraps.
That's interesting. And I remember you did mention that, companies chasing new customers while kind of ignoring the ones they already have. Do you feel like, was there kind of like a particular moment where you realized that, that this isn't really like an isolated issue anymore?
Uh, yeah, I think it's a tech problem. Technology companies are always looking for more subscribers. And you can think of it like as a content company. Once you have a viewer or subscriber, you're really looking to the next one. You're not always feeding your current viewers and subscribers. That's just the nature of the beast of business and growth. But I think tech companies are really bad at this. And unfortunately, I know a little bit from the inside that oftentimes in support, as long as you give any response, you're closing the ticket. Any response is not customer service. Hi, my burger's cold and my fries are old. Okay, yeah, well, we'll get to you. Closed. Did you actually help them? Nope. But we did respond. That's crazy. That is true in auto logistics tech. I guarantee if anybody watches this in automotive, you're going to have people that are silently saying to themselves, "Oh my god, that's exactly the way this works."
Mm.
It sucks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You did say that companies almost treat, responding to customers like just checking a box instead of, actually solving the problem. What does that look like behind the scenes?
Well, they see, okay, this is part of the secret. So if you have I like to give the benefit of the doubt. I could be wrong. Rarely I am, whatever. If this is true, if we're in an industry that is rife with all these problems and cosmetic fixes, then you have companies full of departments that can't say anything. They're just hanging
Mm,
on to their job. They've got a paycheck, they got a family to protect. I really do believe that. It's not that the people are bad. It's just that what else are they going to do? Because if they lose this job, they can't get another. There's, like I said, there's not enough cars to go around. There's not enough jobs to go around. There actually are a lot of job changes. It's another thing that I see a lot of. I see people that defend a company to the death and then they get fired. And it's so, man, that sucks. And how does
mm,
that person feel? We never get to find out how that person feels. There should be a podcast called You
mm.
Fought to the Death for Your Company and You Got Fired Anyways. How are you doing? They would have a million guests.
That's interesting. So if we think about, it's almost like, okay, maybe it's what you're describing may not just be like a software issue. It's almost like an incentive issue almost. Why do you think so many companies become obsessed with acquisition, while slowly neglecting the retention? What are kind of executives optimizing for? What are the metrics that are being celebrated? Or what should they actually be celebrating?
Good question. I'm writing down. Yeah, metrics, KPIs. I actually have KPI PSTD. By the way, I was watching one of your videos. I think the system isn't broken. Okay. And I see that, you are a thinker and because did you create those slides and many of those concepts? Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not
Yes.
everybody does that. Okay, so I saw that. So as in when I hear your question, I realize that there's a lot of ways I can go, and we're doing kind of a macro. Executives, I think overall executives are not my biggest fan, though.
Hmm.
I think that if you're looking at this like business as war, they probably respect the way I fight. But I I'm not a big fan of executives. They're part of the biggest problem of keeping a chunk. But they're not the only problem. And I'll get to acquisitions in a second because I mean, I know of one major company, and I think that there's a lot of private equity in auto logistics and Wall Street money. And we live in a society where we celebrate money and trillionaires and all that. And man, who doesn't want to be a trillionaire? All right. We all do, but not everybody can be a trillionaire. But we're in an industry where everybody's trying. So if trillionaire is your goal, people are
Mm,
not. But we see posts on LinkedIn that say otherwise. So there's this cosmetic transaction that isn't real, which is
mm,
fine. It's business. Getting back to executives, what's happened in auto logistics is, and I used to think, wow, okay, I'm going to learn more about this world and be a part of it. And talking about the trade show circuit. No, it's a club. The
mm,
trade show circuit's a club. And what I'm talking about is trade shows in automotive.
mm,
Now, there's a lot of trade shows, so it's not like one club, but it's all these connected clubs. You just keep seeing the same people because that's the
mm,
center of the club, which is where everyone's clamoring to be. Because if you can clamor to be at the center of the club, then you have the best chance of picking up those new big clients. What I think has
mm,
happened is, even though you spend all the money to be at the center of the club, you're still not picking up new clients because new clients can't tell the difference between you and 20 other auto logistics companies. So now where are we? Well, now we're in a world of hurt. Now that brings us back to the metrics and the KPIs.
mm,
Executives are staring at the numbers saying, why are our numbers going down? We're spending all this money. You're in the club. What are you doing wrong? And I
mm,
think the executives are like, I'm doing everything I can. I'm giving away ski tickets and we're throwing parties. Man, we've had sushi every hour, but I can't pick up new clients because nobody can tell the difference and there's not enough cars to go around.
mm,
So we're in a spiral. I think we're not in a death spiral. That's silly. But I think
mm,
some traditional businesses are seeing a death spiral, which leads them to they go back, they report, they tap dance, say everything's great. I see it in the trade too, in the trade magazines. They're always saying how things are great, except for that's how you know it's not true. They're telling you
mm,
the bad news with a little bit of good news, which leads us to acquisitions. Some of these companies are just going to have to sell to other companies that they've hated for a long time. They're just going to have to. And the reason they don't want to is they know there will be major cuts. Executives get cut when companies merge. And that's when you really see musical chairs.
Well, let's well, some executives hypothetically would just, they'd probably say, we have quarterly goals. Growth has to come first. What would you say to them at that point?
I think that companies that are raising bars on growth are imagining things. I think that most companies, if they're honest, which that's the problem. You've got if you answer to Wall Street and private equity, man, you have
Mhm,
to paint a rosy picture, just like in
mhm,
the magazines. Man, everything's great except for you have to tap dance until you I know a
mhm,
lot of people that are secretly looking for other jobs. There's a lot of people that just are not they're tired of the rat race. Again, you think we should just be picking up and delivering cars? I haven't talked about that hardly at all because that's pretty straightforward. Well, it's not as straightforward as it should be. It is in new cars. You work for a carrier, a fleet of carriers works for a plant and picks up 20 cars, 50 cars a day. That's pretty straightforward. It's the used car market where it's onesies and twosies, people moving, kids going to college, businesses transferring employees, etc. But there's nothing interesting. This, and I know this is true because I've spent years trying to build a channel to talk about picking up and delivering cars. There's almost nothing to talk about. That's not quite true. But the real information is the stuff we've been talking about. It's the politics, and it's the
mhm,
stuff nobody wants to talk about. But people do tell me things because I run a channel. There aren't many channels. Almost nobody's talking about what I'm saying right now. People aren't saying out loud.
mhm,
There's no money in that. You're just going to get fired. That's why companies that make videos, their content is so boring. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to lose a client. And I don't know why it has to be that way. Why do we live in a world where you feel like if you say anything real, you're just going to lose? But that is the world we live in. And it's not just automotive.
That is so true. That is true.
I want to add this. And I think that the Gen Z and younger generations, when you're younger, you kind of see that truth. And that's
Mhm,
why, newer content is so interesting. Everybody hopes to be Mr. Beast, to break
mhm,
through that, right? There's like an atmospheric layer. And if you can break through it, you can actually live a life where you can say what you want and people celebrate you for it. But that is, it's so hard to break through that atmospheric barrier. And when we see creators do it, now Hollywood wants them, right?
mhm,
Markiplier, right? Made Aqualung. And that's, I'm now in my 50s, which is funny to me because I've been making content since I was 20, but it is one of my missions to stay young at heart and just really understand the pulse until I'm far too old to participate. And so I do that in auto logistics too. Again, there's a lot of people in auto logistics who are like, man, shut his mic off. Get this guy, kill this guy. This is terrible for us.
That is good. Wow. I really appreciate that transparency. Well, AI kind of changes everything, or does it? AI
I
is
don't
becoming
know.
a part, I think, every logistics conversation right now. Some people think technology is going to solve the problems. Do you feel that way?
So I'm rarely pie in the sky, but
Mhm,
logistics offers the promise of ability to fix many problems. It's not going to fix all of our problems. I'll ask this question. Can AI fix credit card fraud and tax scams?
I maybe not sure. I do think it may be something that cybersecurity is focused on. I'm pretty sure there are companies out there that's focused on that, whether it's maybe facial recognition or pattern recognitions to some capacity. I think eventually, if not super close.
Right. But it's a hard answer. So
It's
it's
a
also a
definitely a
hard
big problem.
we have
Yes.
two big problems. All right.
Hmm.
One is we have major car shipping hacking, scams, fraud, and theft. Major.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a security issue. The other problem we really have is the complexity of the dispatch. And this has existed forever, is that picking up and delivering a car should be, hey, when do you need it picked up? Cool. When do you need it delivered? Cool. Done. I'll send it to the carrier. It is nothing
Mhm.
like that. What oh man, we got the wrong VIN, we got the wrong address, there's no gate pass, the car's not ready, blah, blah, blah. It's crazy how many
Mhm.
freaking problems there are. So if AI can help solve the complexity of the dispatch, that's actually easier to do. And that's where I
Mm.
think AI will help solve much of the dispatch problems. But now the human dispatchers are like, oh, man, you still need me? Yeah, we still need you. But we
Absolutely.
do need you to be more managerial instead of just a grunt.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. So AI is going to help with that. That's going to actually be big. Also, AI is already being used for like vehicle inspection integrity and accuracy. There are some companies that are using really high level artificial intelligence, machine learning tech. And that's
Mm.
good because a vehicle inspection, it sounds like something that only happens once in a while, but it's literally every car. Every car goes through a vehicle inspection at some point when it switches hands. And in the old days, it was a guy walking around going, yeah, yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, maybe has turned into photos and tech that are not maybe, which actually has made some people at the auction nervous because they're like, yeah, I liked yeah, maybe. I was able to get more money for my cars that I sold. Everything has a ramification. So the more tech and more security we have, the more the roaches will scatter. Not everybody's going to want.
What do you what do you feel should never be automated in this aspect?
Ooh, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Well, we are unsubstitutable. I don't think I've ever said that before. Okay. Doesn't matter. But meaning that like we really are, we're learning more than ever. Like in fact, when I see I can handle AI as information. But if it's an AI person, I'm out. I can handle AI as a layer of service, but not as somebody who's like trying to legitimately help me and interact with me. And I think that you will have to kill off generations of humans to get us to the point where people are just cool with interacting with robots and falling in love with robots. And I mean, there are some people falling in love with robots that aren't really second guessing it. I can't even imagine that. I'm not going to fall in love with a robot, man.
It's pretty
It is weird, but it's okay. I'm not, you do you.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's gonna happen faster than we thought. That's the thing is
Yeah.
that, I like to peer into, I think we all look into the crystal ball and try to figure out what does the future really look like and how do I fit in it? I don't necessarily do the how do I fit in it part as much. I just like to look, what does it look like? And the way I see the future is when I see like a news article about, I don't know if it was Korea or China testing anti-drone weaponry. I'm like, yeah, that's the future. Or like
Mm.
those robot dogs in New York City, that's the future. Or like Amazon drone delivery through office building windows, that's the future. So there is this pretty high tech robot coming soon to a theater near you future. But there's also this old, grimy, messed up tech taping things together past that's still going to exist for quite a while. I think that's why the future kind of still looks that it's that post-apocalyptic Wall-E where you've got high tech meets totally messed up. That's Earth.
Looking back, would you say that I'm pretty sure there was a time where you were looking through the crystal ball in your younger years. Did you kind of envision that this is what, technology would kind of look like today?
Good question. No, I did not. I mean, I've always been interested in tech and science fiction movies and science fiction books, which are literally just future diaries because we're seeing everything come true. Shoot, companies are now naming themselves after, I think there might be a Cyberdyne Systems. But I didn't think about what the world would look like in 30 years back in the 90s. I didn't do that. I don't know. I don't know. Did you do that? Or are you doing it now? I mean, because it's impossible to see the future.
Yeah, it definitely is impossible.
It's impossible, which is actually really
Yeah.
weird when you think about it. Because we watch Back to the Future, it's so obvious. Well, I'm thinking of Back to the Future 1. It is so weird how you can't see the future, but the past is so obvious. That's freaking weird. If we can crack that nut, if we can figure out time travel, I think that's the really big one. Everything else is just so you're using ChatGPT to make a presentation. What about time travel?
I think there's some stuff out there. I fall into rabbit holes all the time sometimes, and it's interesting to see. We got quantum computing, which computers were going to get to the point where they could kind of be that smart, but not that fast. I never thought it would be that quick, and it's moving faster every day. So, I mean, I think there are studies around that to some capacity. I think they can take you down a rabbit hole, and sometimes I don't know. I can kind of spend too much time in those things sometimes. Just super interesting, right?
And it's healthy. Actually, that's a great way to gain perspective on what you're actually working on. And I think that I actually, along with my many other thoughts, I think that we downplay the importance of art in our lives because
Mm.
our jobs, nobody gives a shit about what you like at your job. Nobody cares. Don't even talk about it. In fact, you keep it secret because you feel like they're going to try to manipulate you. Like, oh, you did really crappy last week. We're taking away your skiing. But having said, some of those things, I think that, like, what worries me is how much, I don't know, energy data centers are absorbing. These AI data centers are like, we're gonna be on the streets begging for water while the data centers suck up all the actual water. That could actually happen.
That's the
I
first
know.
time. Yeah, that's
That's
definitely
really
something to think about.
freaky. And
Yeah.
now you're working for robots. So if you think your boss is bad, oh my God, wait until you're working for robot. And see, that's going to happen. And I'm not interested. I really don't want. I'm glad I'm in my 50s because I don't want to work for robots. I'm sure I'm still going to have to.
Yeah, I think a lot of the narrative around AI and human replacement, I think it was very strong. Definitely earlier this year. I think a lot of people are kind of noticing like that type of narrative, which makes the human in the loop very important, right? Having the harnesses and the guardrails and the governance to make sure that whatever you create kind of keeps you in control, essentially. But I love to tap into. Let's imagine someone listening today is running a dealership, a brokerage, a logistics company, and they realize, hey, Jay's describing us right now. Where do they kind of start?
Shut it off, guys. Stop listening to that guy. They're not going to listen. They don't want to hear it. Even if he's right, that's a cut, guys. Cut. Don't listen to that. Really. That's our industry. Don't listen to that guy. He's wrong. Sucks, man. I mean, that's fine. I just I don't need to be right, but I don't know how many people are going to end up in therapy going, oh my God, I spent years defending this company that fucking fired me. I drank the Kool-Aid. I splashed the Kool-Aid. I was on LinkedIn dumping Kool-Aid all over my face and they still fired me. I mean, that's real. And I see it. I see people getting fired even though
Mm,
they swam in the Kool-Aid. I just feel so
ouch.
bad for them. Now, I also know what it's like. Long ago I worked for a company. They did something wrong. And I was
Mhm.
online on internet was pretty new at that time. It was in the 90s. No, it was 2000. It wasn't brand new. But anyways, I was online trying to defend them in comments. Come to find out, everybody in the comments was right. The people I was working for were shysters, and I didn't know it. Welcome to auto logistics. And it really sucks. If you learn this early on in your career, what are you going to do? What are you going to
Yeah.
do? What happens is eventually you'll learn that there's no ladder. You're not going to get a promotion. They're not bringing you up. You've been there for years. They're not bringing you up. You're getting the minimum raise. What does that leave you with? And that's actually what that's part of quiet quitting, right? You've heard of quiet quitting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you want to work
Yeah.
for robot? I mean, what are we doing? I did want to add this too. Today we're talking about working for robots. And 6 years ago we were talking about COVID. And I think one of the things that really sucks, but we're all experiencing, not just auto logistics, it's the world, is we go through these waves of fear and frenzy only to find out that we've been duped because something bigger was happening. People feel that way about 9/11. They feel that way about JFK. They probably feel that way about the Boston Tea Party. I mean, it's just this never ending cycle of duped. People are being duped right now. That's why they want you to shut it off. Stop listening to that guy. He's full of crap. But what do you do with it? Let's say you believe it. What do you do with all this truth? I have no idea. I don't have answers. I just can point out the problems.
Got you. You know what? Yeah, and I think that is a lot of truth that everybody may quietly know, but just almost nobody speaks out loud. If we do have to think about legacy, what do you hope your work leaves behind?
Well, I don't think I must not have some of those. Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, the truth is, yeah, legacy, sure. I want to have a positive legacy. Some people I think about legacy, because their grandparents are like legacy, go to
Mm,
Harvard and all this stuff. I
yeah.
don't really have that. I have two boys, so when I think of legacy, I think of my boys. They're both in college now. They're both into media, and so I think of that as my legacy. Like, well, if I was able to, you know, if I can help them be better at the media that they work with, that's my legacy. Because this channel, nobody wants it. I was talking to somebody this morning about how like the goal of this channel was to help auto logistics be better. People don't want that. It's not a thing. So here's what I wanted to say is that I think of myself now more of like a Mark Twain or a George Carlin. I'm just this temporary comedian and you just take it for what you will. I don't think I'm going to have a real impact. Some people will remember my crap. Other than that, I was here. I should scroll that on the beam, just like on Shawshank Redemption.
Got it.
Jay
And
was
in the
here.
interest of time, I have one more question, Jay. You know, 10 years from now, what will separate the
Yeah.
companies people do trust from the companies people forget?
Well, I always think about how, like,
MySpace.
oh gosh, I'm trying to think of it now.
Yeah.
What was the first, before Facebook, there
Mhm.
was MySpace. MySpace was everything. All right. I'm in Hollywood in the 90s. And in the 90s,
Mhm.
MySpace was every other word. And then it was den.net, which I don't know if anybody remembers that. All right. So
Yeah,
I
I,
bring
I
that
I
up
do
because
use Facebook.
today
Yeah.
nobody talks. Facebook. Do you Facebook? You do. Okay. And
Mhm.
a lot of people do, but it ain't what it used to be, right? Which is really, really hard to
Yeah.
believe because what, 10, 15 years ago, Facebook was everything. And I know I'm jumping around, but you see where I'm going. And there's companies from 80 years ago you probably can't even name that were the jam, right? So it's cyclical. Tesla, I don't know. Maybe Tesla will be the shit forever. I mean, robots working on Mars, that's going to be pretty hard to topple.
Yeah. What's
And
gonna be,
Amazon, oh my
in the next
God,
10 years,
dude,
what's
literally
what's gonna be
everybody
that thing
buys
that
all their crap
that
from
separates
Amazon,
companies people trust from the ones people
right?
forget?
So, what was the question? Oh, yeah, okay. All right. So, all right, well, here's where I'm going. And because if I do have a legacy, it's that I'm going to help turn the mulch. I'm now a
Well,
decomposer in the ecosystem. And the two of the biggest companies in our ecosystem they're going down because it's old, it's untrustworthy, and there's this need for we need new real AI solutions,
uh,
real AI dispatch, real AI security, and that those are going to be new faces, new companies, and they're going to be fighting, you know, the old crusty Godzillas go down fighting, and so they will. And they may even try to buy the new companies. So this brings us acquisition is so fascinating because the Wall Street guys, they think of acquisition as another ski trip, whereas in the real world for the workers, acquisition is a sign of difficult change. So there will be acquisitions as Godzilla's
uh,
going down. He's going to acquire other things to try to stay alive. And that's not always good. It's just part of Godzilla's nature. So it's going to be a rocky ride. I don't know how long it takes, if ever. Here's the thing. I didn't even mention this. What happens when cars deliver themselves?
uh,
We're going to either get to
that's-
that or there will be a new guard of great new tech, or it'll be a combination. But we're
uh,
going to have autonomous trucks. We're going to have autonomous car delivery, and people are going to want it. That's another thing. Like, I think it's funny when people are like, I would never trust an autonomous vehicle.
uh,
Huh, that's funny because have you been to cities like Los Angeles?
that is
They're
true.
everywhere. Waymo
Jay, when we
is
started, you
everywhere.
said that, trust in the
In
industry is
fact,
on
I
life
think there
support.
are now people. that
just
would
having this
rather ride
conversation,
in an
yeah,
autonomous
and just kind of
vehicle
hearing your
than
perspective.
have some sketchy
And
Uber
I'm
driver.
convinced that I'm not
It's going to be
convinced
the
that
same
trust
for
disappeared
vehicle
at this point.
delivery.
It's more so, I
People would
think,
rather have
somewhere
a
along the
robot
way,
do it than have some sketchy
leaders
guy
just
working
stopped
with another
investing in it.
sketchy guy that never tells the
Technology didn't
truth
break
about
it.
this or that. Just give me a
The
robot.
people kind of did, and the
I don't
encouraging
want a
part
human
is
being on this
that
one.
the people can rebuild it. Yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on. Okay. Mm.
I want to add, here's the final segment because you brought up the L word, leadership. Oh my God. Okay. When I hear people, and I'm also going to talk about culture and leadership and, interchangeable. I keep hearing companies talk about, we have great culture. Okay. If you have great culture, you were lucky because you can't walk in, set up coffee machines and create great culture. That's not how people operate. All right. And leadership, all these people say they're leadership and life coaches. Barf. I'm not saying leadership and culture isn't real, but you can't manufacture that shit because you need a job. And a lot of people are not suited for actual leadership or generating actual culture because they don't talk like real people. And we see this on LinkedIn too. Oh
Mhm.
my God, please, if you see a picture of a
Mhm.
beautiful person in a yacht and a ski suit talking about culture and leadership, that is horseshit. When I
I
see a
love that.
guy
I love
jacked
that.
out on steroids with a Jesus shirt and
Yeah,
he's
thanks for
talking about
coming on, Jay.
leadership and
How
culture,
for
fuck
anyone
you, man.
watching this, man, is
We're
there
not buying it.
anything that you would
You
just want
care
them to
more about
absolutely know?
working out than leadership. And the other person cares more about vacationing than culture. It's not the
Perfect,
same
man. Well,
thing.
how can people
Stop
find you
trying to sell
if
me
they
something that isn't true.
wanna
So
reach out?
leadership and culture, the manufacturing of such happens in those people inside clubs at trade shows, all clamoring for the same leadership and culture. I hate it. I'm not alone. Man, I'm trying to help. I really am.
Love it, love it. Well, perfect, Jay. If you're watching this right now, today's conversation challenged
My YouTube channel is
how you may think
ATI
about
Auto
leadership.
Business on
And, just
YouTube.
make sure that you
You
share
can
this
go to
episode with another operator
atiautobusiness.com,
because to me,
but that's
trust
going to
isn't
send
built
you
through
to
marketing.
my
It's built
YouTube channel.
through
That's where I do
thousands of small
everything. I do
decisions that
live
nobody really
shows,
sees. And
most
we'll
shows
see
I
you
do
next
are
time
live.
on Legacy
So,
Decoding. Thanks
but I'm a
again.
video guy and I also do help some people make great videos and build up their own
Absolutely.
YouTube
Jay,
channels.
thanks again.
That's kind of what I've pivoted to. I used to be more of a content and show, where now I'm more of a individual client services provider to help build YouTube channels and content. And if you made it to the end, put it in the comments. I actually made it to the end. Thanks, Kalei.